Hello and welcome to Crit to Block Podcast. We are your hosts, Eric Maylott
and Richard Lavery,
here to bring you in-depth conversation about competitive Star Wars Legion. Today's conversation is going to be focused on support commanders, what they are, how to build them, and how to play them.
Support commanders have been around since Wave 2 of the game, and we've seen a lot of additions to the role over the past few years, with a lot of exciting options in the near future. So to help get you prepared for the future and the changing landscape of the game, let's talk about what exactly is a support commander and why they are critical to your lists.
Excellent. So, Richard, what is a support commander?
Eric, I'm so glad you asked me. So a support commander, there's a few things that make them what they are, and some are more critical than the others. The most important one in my mind is you're trading your actions. You know, every unit in the game gets 2 actions on when you activate them. You're trading one of your actions, or 2 of your actions in some cases, to benefit other units in the game. And what do I mean by that, right? So if we look at keywords like spotter or take cover, your commander is taking that action and losing one of their 2 actions in order to hand out aims or dodges to other units. Maybe themselves if they have exemplar, different conversation. Other examples would be strategize or bolster. And really, in general, you're going to get the most value out of this if you are doubling that action, right? That there's an idea of action economy and efficiency. So if you have spotter 1 and you're handing out 1 aim to a unit, you're saving that unit 1 single action at the cost of 1 action. If you have spotter 2, you're gaining 2 actions for the cost of 1 action. Spotter 3. It kind of cascades on itself a little bit there. And really, the value becomes a bit exponential, if that makes sense.
It does. And in the spirit of saving actions, courage value is another big thing with support commanders. So obviously, if units are suppressed or panicked, they lose actions. So a big thing that support commanders do, obviously, or all commanders, is allow core troopers, friendly troopers, to use their courage value. So a great thing for support commanders is a high courage value. And in addition, we have things like Inspire to help remove suppression from friendly units, and command slot upgrades that can also help either extend that range of your courage bubble or even help pull additional suppression off of friendly units.
And another characteristic of support commanders is they tend to perform the attack action a lot less often. Typically, you'll see a move plus their support action, whether that's spotter, take cover, guidance, strategize. You know, there's a whole plethora of possible support actions they can take. But you're not, not to say that you're not attacking with them, but if you're thinking about Darth Vader, right, your number, or Anakin, what have you, right? One of the things you're doing is performing an attack with their turn. And if you're not performing an attack, you're not really getting the most value out of that piece on the field. Support commanders, on the other hand, if you don't attack with them an entire game, you're still generating a lot of value from them with the other things they're doing.
When I think of this, it's if there is a good attack pool, they probably aren't purely there for support. Whereas someone like Poggle the Lesser, I couldn't tell you what his attack pool is, but he obviously has a lot of good support keywords, which means he brings value to the army.
Yes.
But I think as a result of the decreased attack capabilities, these units typically come in cheaper than their more killy comrades, I suppose. And so they're usually closer, recent points changes. They are as low as 55 points now, and they usually come in less than 100 points. We might see an exception or two as we talk about some units specifically.
I mean, Legion's full of exceptions. You know, there's always something that breaks the rule at this point in the game. The other thing is support commanders tend to have really good command cards that support the army. Again, going back to the example, your Anakins, your Vaders, they're very order-centric on them to do one specific thing. There's usually a lot of offensive potential there. But some of the supportive command cards really give a buff to your army, whether that's something like Leia's 2-pip that gives you some move actions. General Veers gives recover actions off of his. Kraken and Kalani, they have a 2-pip that gives impervious. There's all sorts of great options here. So the command cards are not necessarily oriented and specific to the commander, but more focused on helping the rest of the army.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think additionally, there are some unique abilities on specific commanders that help in general just with controlling your army. Giving out additional orders is always nice because order control is at a premium in Legion. Sharing tokens with Exemplar, and even just helping units move, whether it's compel, guidance, or like Lando's one step ahead. Just the better you are at getting your army in position and where they need to be, tells me you're probably a support commander.
Yeah, so just to recap before we move on to some of these other topics here. So the 6 principles we've got for support commanders: you're trading your actions for other allies, you have courage utility, you're performing the attack action less often, you're cheaper compared to your compatriots in the command slot, you have supportive command cards, and you have other more unique abilities to help support the army.
Yeah, so once we have a support commander, I guess, what do you recommend for how to play them? I feel like I don't necessarily play a lot of support commanders, even though I play rebels and I have a couple good options.
You do?
But I feel like I tend to focus more on operatives and special forces. So teach me your ways, I guess. What do you recommend for playing support commanders?
Yeah, I absolutely adore support commanders. So one of the key things with them is, in order to really get value, they need to stay alive, which means you got to utilize that terrain and kind of hide them and keep them out of sight, right? They should not be on the front line. They should be behind the rest of your armory by a good bit. You typically want to keep them within that half stick for backup range to kind of stave off those range 3 shots if you can't hide behind line of sight. But basically, you want to force a situation where if your opponent's going to get attacks on them, they have to overextend to get to that support commander. Basically, ignore the rest of your army to go after them. This has a secondary benefit of being really good for some of the objectives in the game right now, such as marked targets. You know, if your commander piece is hiding behind line of sight blocking terrain, or is, in heavy cover with backup and things of this nature, they're going to be a lot harder to remove.
Yeah, and I think something that's good to keep in mind is if you're playing something like marked targets, you might see that Pike Capo or like a clone commander and think, oh, they're low health, they're like important to the army, so I want to focus on killing them. I'll make them a marked target and I get a victory point for doing what I want to do anyways. But if your opponent is playing in the way that Richard would recommend, then they're going to be hidden and really difficult, despite their low health and potentially like weakness. They're going to be difficult to actually remove from the game. So just keep that in mind when you're picking things like marked targets.
So that's kind of where you would expect to have them positioned on the field. But one of the other really key parts about playing a support commander well is knowing what the range of your abilities are. We are a little bit lucky right now that with the update to 2.6, or I guess it's now just Legion, but the edition of the game that we're in now kind of saw an update to a lot of these support abilities that took them from range 1 to range 2 abilities. I'm talking about like Spotter, Strategize, Take Cover, things of that nature are now range 2, which is great. That gives you a little bit more leniency. But in order to use support abilities, you have to be in range of the units that you want to target, which means a lot of the time you need to have an understanding of where you want units to be moving on the field if you're not activating that support piece early, right? So, luckily some of the things have changed. Inspire, a great example, is now at the end of the activation. So that's a little bit more forgiving instead of the beginning of the activation. But, if you're trying to guidance a unit, you have to be in range 2. And if you moved a unit aggressively up in the first place, you might be struggling to get to that guidance range with a single move action. So just, keep in mind what the range of your abilities are. Know what they are. For the most part, it's going to be range 2, which is, like I said, a little bit more forgiving, but you still need to be cognizant of that bubble around your commanders.
And I think in that sense, knowing what abilities that you are trying to keep in specific ranges tells you when that unit probably needs to activate in the round. So if you're handing out tokens with things like spotter and take cover, that unit probably wants to go early in the round for obvious reasons, to make sure that whatever unit they're supporting has the tokens they need before they activate. Suppression issues, on the other hand, is a little bit different. It's kind of just dependent on the game state, really. If you have a unit that needs to go early on, but they have suppression, then you want to activate that support commander early. But I think usually it's more common to save that for mid or late round and make sure that unit is ready to go for future turns.
Helps with objectives as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Helps with objectives. And then giving additional actions, that really is just dependent on your keywords. Like guidance, I think is a big one there, and it depends on what your plan is. You can do a lot of different things with guidance. You can give out any kind of non-attack action. So if you're taking a standby, maybe you want to go earlier. If you're giving them a recover or something, maybe wait until later in the round.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of different options there. So, sticking with this theme of recapping here, when you're playing support commanders, know your ability range, utilize terrain to hide and stay out of line of sight as much as possible in order to stay around for the longest amount of time, and know when they need to activate in the round. Because knowing when they need to activate, one of the things we should touch on here is having the difference between fishing for them in your bag or having a face-up order token on them and knowing when you're going to activate them. That's kind of an important piece of knowing when to go with them in a round as well.
Yeah, that's a great call out, just because I know I've used a bus in the past as like a very timing specific support piece, whether it's got the unorthodox tactician, so I want to hand out aims, and Shriv on there handing out dodges, or if there's a medic on there, I need the bus to activate late so that I can heal something that has been wounded or died that turn. And so I usually put like an HQ uplink on that specific support piece so that I can know exactly when to activate it. I think commanders are similar in that sense. Usually their command cards will give themselves an order, but in the case that they don't, you may still want to give them an order just to give you that level of control on when they can really give you the most value.
And the other thing too is when we're talking about knowing when to activate them is let's use Leia as an example, right? So she has take cover. You want to be handing out those dodges, but she also has inspire. So you have to be cognizant of your board state and what you need. Turns 1 and 2, it's probably more important to activate Leia on the early side of the round in order to hand out those dodges, where in turns 3 and 4, it might be more important to hold her to mid game to be able to take suppression off a unit that needs to double move, or late in the turn in order to remove suppression from a panicked unit in order to have them counting for scoring a POI.
Yeah.
There's a fluid state of when you need to be activating these commanders, and understanding that fluid state is going to be critical to getting the most out of them. Again, in general, I think that example is probably pretty good. Rounds 1 through 3, you want to activate them fairly early. Rounds 4 and 5, you probably want to activate them a little bit later.
So, support commanders, we know what they are. We know a little bit about how to play them. Let's talk about upgrades to really squeeze the most value out of them. So, I'm thinking the first thing that comes to mind is super easy, something like portable scanner or electrobinoculars on a unit that already has that keyword. So, Veers has spotter 2, naturally.
Veers does have spotter 2.
So, you throw electrobinoculars on there. He's got spotter 3. Now you're handing out 3 aims with 1 action. It's wonderful. Same with Leia. With Take Cover, you put a portable scanner on there. Suddenly she's handing out 3 dodges for 1 action. Rebels love dodges. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. If you can stack another instance of the same keyword they already have, that's easy money.
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, for some of our newer to the game friends, any of those numerical values stack. It's always a keyword X will continue to stack up. So if you have upgrades like portable scanners or electro binoculars, those numbers are going to stack on what already exists. So keep that in mind. It's pretty important. Mm-hmm. The other thing, or the next set of upgrades, are really going to be sitting in that command slot. They're going to help you with the suppression game. We're talking Inspiring Presence to increase your command bubble from range 3 to range 4. That's really critical on some of the Courage 3 support commanders to just give you absolute coverage on the field. Range 4 is massive.
Yeah. It's range 8 if you make a circle around yourself. Like that's most of the board, which is great.
It is. Lead by example gives Inspire 2. So that is wonderful. If you throw that on someone like Leia, suddenly you have Inspire 4. You're removing 4 suppression at the end of Leia's activation. Pretty strong, but you can throw that on any commander and suddenly they're removing suppression. If you have really good order control, strict orders is another option that you can go.
I think I've kind of slept on strict orders personally, but in my game last night, it came up and I was like, man, this unit's indomitable, but the red die, I just had 1 suppression. But that red die failed the one time and is like, strict orders might be good when you're dealing with a lot of Courage 1 things, even if they are indomitable, for example, because I was running a lot of fat squads. So I think it's really good value. I think I need to consider that one more closely.
I'm getting a ton of value out of strict orders right now in my current Empire list. It's just really good to be able to automatically remove 1 without having to roll dice. So keep that in mind as an option. It's also a very cheap upgrade at 5.
Yes, 5 points is good.
The other thing,
the big thing.
We would be remiss if we didn't talk about this. Upgrades in the command slot that help with order control. You can literally never go wrong in this game with a copy of Improvised Orders. I think in the entire time I've played this game, which is since day 1, we're going on 8 years, there is 1 list that I didn't take in copy of Improvised Orders. The ability to draw a random token from your bag or your stack, look at it and go, I don't want this, and to be able to have a second chance to draw is so strong in this game.
It is.
And 5 points for it is incredibly cheap.
Yes.
There are many times where I take 2 copies of Improvised Orders. Is that necessary for every list? No. But I don't think
I've ever taken 2 copies, Richard.
I'm taking 2 copies right now.
Well, you're a madman.
Fair.
And there are some times when you are reminded why it's only 5 points when you draw 2 of the exact same token, and it's very frustrating.
That does happen more often than we probably want to admit. But one of the ways you can get around that too is it's a tappable upgrade, right? It's exhaustible. But you can take a recover action with your support commander to get that back, to basically have it built in as 2 copies per turn. So even if you're only taking 1 copy of the card for your whole army, you can still get 2 uses per turn, except for turn 1. You might even be able to get that turn 1, but that's not really the point. This is not a must take. This is you have to have a really good reason not to take this upgrade.
I think that is the key point right there. It's one of those things you need a good reason not to do it. But if you're just feeling whimsical, maybe don't take it and just See what happens.
We do know you love to feel whimsical,
Yes,
Eric. We love that about your lists.
Sometimes live and die by the token pool, and just I get whatever the token gods bestow upon me.
So we've talked about what makes a support commander. We've talked about how to play and how to position your support commanders on the field. And we've talked about what upgrades you should want to consider for a support commander. Now we're going to take a look at the support commanders by faction, and we're going to talk about what exactly makes them a support commander and some of the, suggested upgrades on them to make them really sing. So let me go ahead and share the screen here.
And I think... Let's see. Empire is the new hotness with the latest update. Let's just start with Empire. I feel like we always start with Rebels and me, so let's switch it up.
Okay, well, let's start with General Veers here then. So General Veers has Inspire to remove that suppression. He has Exemplar in order to share tokens. He's got Guidance Ground Vehicle to give ATSTs and Gav tanks additional actions, and he has Spotter 2. So really, he's got quite the suite of support commander upgrades there. He does have Sharpshooter, he does have a decent blaster, but again, that's if things go wrong. There has to be something specific going on in order to want to take those.
I don't think it's happened in New Legion, but I can recall multiple games where I've played against you and you have Veers, and it's just like, oh, I'll just take a shot with Veers. Not something I was planning on doing, but I'll do it. And then blammo. It's like, okay, that hurt more than I expected, and I did not like it.
Well, and one of the reasons, especially in Old Legion, was, Veers does Surge Crit, which is great. Mm-hmm. Sharpshooter, also great. It was, his rifle was 3 white dice with Pierce 1. It's 3 red dice, so it's a little more consistent now.
Yep.
But it lost the Pierce, so the expected damage ends up being pretty close to about the same.
Yeah.
But at this point, with picking up Exemplar, Veers can spotter if you take binoculars on him. So let's look at a build real quick. This is my preferred build for Veers. Improvised orders, we've talked about. You're going to see that a lot. Electro binoculars, spotter 3. You're handing out 3 aims. One of the great things you can do with that is hand an aim to 2 friendly units and put 1 on yourself. Since you have Exemplar, any of your allied units can now use that aim. Can't work for mercenaries and things that don't share your faction symbol, but any Empire units, your shore troopers, your stormtroopers, etc., can use that aim on Veers. It's very strong.
Seems
so one of the
good.
things I've been, it's great. So one of the things I've been doing with Veers and pretty much all of my entourage commanders is I'll use their ability, whatever it is. So for Empire, it's Spotter, and then I'm going to take a dodge, and then I'm tokened up for everyone in a range 2 bubble from me to be able to use those tokens. The other thing, we can touch on his command cards real quick too. So maximum firepower, not a support commander card. It's not one that I bring very often. Evasive maneuvers, 2 vehicles, giving them nimble can be very strong, especially since you give them a dodge token. It could be a way to keep speeder bikes alive a little bit longer, so that's pretty great. But really, Imperial Discipline is where that support piece is going to come into play, and let's get that a little bit bigger on the screen for us. So when an allied unit is issued an order, it gets a recover action. That's just great. Recover actions are wonderful, whether to ready upgrades or to remove suppression. So a lot of utility there.
Or both.
Okay, enough about Veers. Let's jump over to Director Krennic. Director Krennic, again, spotter, great. Compel. So and that's compel generic, which is wonderful. So if a unit is suppressed but not panicked, they can take another suppression in order to get a free move action. So your snow troopers end up with a suppression on them and they can't get it off. Guess what? They're still moving twice and taking a shot with steady. It's wonderful. Cunning to ensure that you are going first when you really want to with his command cards. Entourage is a great support ability as well. You're handing out extra orders. You're breaking the Force org. And Exemplar, we've talked about, absolutely amazing. This is the build that I've been loving for Director Krennic. You're coming in 5 points cheaper than Veers. You still have Spotter 2. You still have Improvised Orders. But now you have that key strict orders that we've been talking about. That's so good. His command cards are also very good. Voracious Ambition, while it only hands out an order to him, it does put 3 orders on to the command card, so that gives you a lot of control. It's also a cunning 1-pip, so you're almost guaranteed to be going first the turn that you want. So that really opens up a lot of possibilities for your army. Deploy the Garrison is great. You're handing out standby tokens while situational. Absolutely fantastic in and the situations that really matter. It's 2 troopers. You could put a standby on Commander Vader. That can't be stripped off because he can't receive suppression. Annihilation Looms, a little bit of a trickier one. I don't know if I would call that a support piece necessarily, but it does have order control. And again, in certain situations, it does the work that it needs to do by dumping suppression on your opponents. So that is the Empire. Where do you want to go to next, Eric?
Let's try Rebels.
To Rebels. Okay.
Yeah,
I think I have this split into 2 different options. Just because 2 of the support pieces are in a battle force.
Yeah, so we could start with Lando. He got a glow up fairly recently, so he's kind of the hotness right now for support commanders. He has Guidance Core Trooper, which is really, really fun. I wasn't necessarily expecting Guidance on a Rebel commander, but I've seen other factions have it. It seems good. It is great. Just helping, like we talked about earlier, helping units, if they need to take an extra move action, Lando can get them where they're going. I have toyed around with giving out standby tokens to things like Mark IIs or vets with Overwatch. Just creating that standby bubble can be really effective in that sense. And even if they strip off, it's very fun if you perhaps give an order to a Mark II so they get a standby with their keywords, and then your opponent takes the time to strip that standby off, and then here comes Lando. He's just going to hand it right back. And so that standby bubble still exists. And I'm not going to say it's a negative play experience, but it can be frustrating for your opponent. Allies of Convenience.
More importantly.
Yeah. Allies of Convenience, not necessarily a support keyword there, but one step ahead, I think, is the big one here. And
that's the one.
I think this is specific to Lando. We haven't seen this anywhere else. And for those that have forgotten or don't remember or didn't learn, basically, if you match pips when you issue orders, any allied unit can do a speed 1 move. It is not a move action, so you don't trigger things like tactical or agile, but like we talked about again, you are just helping put your army where it needs to be. If you don't match pips, Lando gets a speed 1 move. Not as impactful, potentially, but again, you are putting Lando in the best position to succeed there because you want to stay in that guidance range. So you want to stay at range 2 of a key core unit that you might want to guidance on that turn. So I think that's a big one. Between guidance and one step ahead, I think both those keywords are really powerful, but it is reflected in his cost because he comes in at 105 points base. And so if you put improvised orders on him, he has 110. I haven't toyed around with putting something like electro binoculars or portable scanner on him to help really, if you want to maybe guidance something and give out a token, that is something you could do, and then really rely on one step ahead to move him around the board where he needs to be. I haven't really tried it, but it is an option. But again, that just adds to his cost.
You're adding cost, and you kind of want to keep him on the cheaper side.
Yeah, I could see lead by example on him as well, just to give him an inspire. And that's a passive ability that you don't have to spend your actions since you're already doing things like guidance. More commonly, we see Leia. She is the classic Rebel support commander. She's been out since Wave 2 with Veers. And she actually is basically just Veers, but in rebel form. So instead of handing out aims, she hands out dodges because rebels love dodges. She gained Exemplar. She has Inspire. Nimble to help keep her alive, and Sharpshooter 2. She also throws 3 red at range 3. Similar
Which
to
is
Veers.
quite an upgrade for her.
It is. I mean, she used to throw 3 black, and she used to have Pierce.
But wasn't it also range 1 to 2 before?
It was range 1 to 2. You're right.
She got a whole range increase.
She did, which is very nice. I don't know if I've played Leia yet since her update, but
Really?
I'm hoping to change that. Like I said, support commanders aren't my bread and butter as much as operatives, but I'm working on it. So she's got a lot of the standard support keywords, which again are really good. You get a lot of action economy out of her. She has, I think, again, similar to Veers, she has okay command cards. She's got the one that most people want, and that is her 2-pip, No Time for Sorrows. Issue 2 troopers of any kind, give them a speed 1 move. So again, with Lando's 1 step ahead, and Leia, you're just moving things wherever you need them to be, and it's really powerful. Her 1-pip, also like Veers, it's a range 4 and beyond. At the end of her activation, she gets an attack to 3 units. Can be good, but people usually aren't starting out the game with a 1-pip these days, and you're using up a valuable 1-pip slot. And so
I'm surprised that we're not talking about her 3-pip though.
Do you enjoy her 3-pip? If you have a plan for this 3-pip, I would love to hear it, because I always leave this one out.
Yeah, so you get to activate 2 units back to back. So Leia, does her support shenanigans that she needs to, hands out dodges, maybe takes an aim with, since she has Exemplar.
Right.
And then you immediately activate a critical piece to go. It's in a game where we trade taking activations one after the other. So I go, then you go. The ability to activate back to back is very strong. I think this is actually an underrated card personally, but I know the 3-pip slot is kind of a hot command card category for Rebels.
Rebels have a lot of good 3-pips. We don't have a lot of good turn 1 cards, which is what you'd probably see 3-pips most often. I think the problem for me with this card is, I think if Veers had this card, it would be amazing, because you're handing out aims and you're tokening up those shots that are about to happen. With Leia handing out dodges primarily, that unit that you want to go next is already about as safe as can be, in a sense. Like, you have given them the defensive capabilities to withstand a shot coming in my head. I could be incorrect. And I think you're right. It probably has room for exploration. But that's where my head goes, where like, I'm giving them defensive capabilities to survive that incoming fire. And then, in a game where we value passes, it can be really beneficial to see what your opponent is about to do, instead of just trying to double up your activations.
That's fair. Well, why don't we jump over to the kind of hyper specific support commanders? We can touch on these briefly because they're not going to come up as often.
C-3PO, our golden god for Bright Tree Village. So he's got some interesting keywords. Granted, I don't play a lot of Bright Tree Village, so I'm not an expert here. But Master Storyteller is pretty great. It hands out surges, 2 surges to X number of units, where X is whatever round it is. So the later the game, as long as he is still alive, he gets more powerful, as any golden god would. And that is particularly good because Ewoks do not surge offensively or defensively, so surges are always welcome. Compel, again, very powerful. Bright Tree has some interesting key mechanics around suppression, so they don't get to remove suppression at the end of the round. They really benefit from Inspire and Compel for that reason, just to make sure they get that action economy and they can move and then do something else. Divine Influence, not really a support keyword, but it helps keep him alive. Ewoks can gain Guardian to soak some wounds around him. More interestingly and more commonly taken in Bright Tree is Logray. He gets to aid his Ewok troopers. Very good. So anytime he gains an aim or a dodge, he can instead pass it to one of his friends. And obviously, with Independent, he gains an aim or dodge every round. Inspire, excellent, like we talked about, because Ewoks can't remove suppression at the end of the round. And he has some fun upgrades that really... He can bring back some defeated minis with his herbal medicine. Very good support commander ability. It's always nice to bring your friends back. And secret ingredients, you just get to really lean into the aid keyword here. He gets free tokens at the start of each round. And when he uses aid, he does not have to get a suppression for it.
Which is fantastic in this list.
Yes, it is very, very good.
I think we'd also be remiss in mentioning that Logray is Courage 3.
That's true.
He is a excellent target for that inspiring presence we were talking about. If all of your Ewoks are Courage 3 within range 4 of Logray, that's pretty strong.
Yep.
For purposes of panicking. But
Right.
you combine that with Compel, and suddenly your melee-based Ewoks are always moving and attacking, or moving, or your slingers are move attacking, whatever you need.
Yeah,
okay,
spot
great.
on.
So that's Rebels in a nutshell. Where do you want to go to next, Eric?
Let's go Gar. Let's see what the Republic's up to.
So, Gar is where we're going to break some of the precedent that we've set so far. So let's talk about the one that doesn't break precedent. Let's talk about the Clone Commander. Clone Commander really focused on two keywords here. The Bolster 2, so it hands out surge tokens that Gar is absolutely starving for surge tokens at all times. So that's always wonderful. And Direct helps take care of some of that order control issues. If you combo that with something like 5s, for just existing, you're handing out 2 orders every turn, which is pretty wonderful. Additionally, when we're talking about the Clone Commander, it has the Clone Trooper keyword, which, while it's not exemplar, functionally works as exemplar, where you can share a token with a trooper up to range 2. This is pretty great. You can bolster and then take an aim or a dodge, depending on the situation that's required. Stay super safe. 4 health red saves, pretty strong. You can keep them really cheap at 60 points. You can throw lead by example, improvised orders, what have you on him to, beef him up a little bit. Now let's get into our breaker.
Let's break stuff.
Yeah, we love breaking stuff. So the first one on that list is gonna be Yoda. Yoda, the only real thing on his card here is Guidance Trooper. To be able, we've talked about it a few times already. Guidance is a great keyword. You get a free action that's not a non-attack action. This used to be a better keyword in the days of you can make an attack with steady, relentless, or charge. Those days are no longer with us. So that's okay. Yoda is very expensive at 150. However, Master of the Force 2 allows you to kind of play some additional support roles. Things like Force Barrier, where a shot coming in, you can just cancel 2 hits or a crit after the cover save, which is really great. We were just talking about how Gar is starving for tokens. Force Guidance gives you 2 of those surge tokens. Then, some other options, Jedi Mind Tricks to dump additional suppression on to enemy units. Force Push is a great utility option as well if you want to control the battlefield a little bit. So Yoda definitely has a few options for how to really influence things. The other thing is we talked about that high courage value being so important for some of the support commanders. For the majority of them, they're Courage 2, but the ones that are Courage 3 really stand out. Yoda's Courage 4. So if you put something like Inspiring Presence on Yoda, because he does have a command slot, you have a range 4 Courage 4 bubble the odds that your clone troopers are ever panicking is minimal at best. The other thing we really got to talk about when it comes to Yoda is Yoda's 3-pip. His 2-pip's important as well because it gives it a target unit relentless. But this 3-pip is kind of the epitome of a support commander, right? You get 2 aims, 2 dodges, and 2 surge tokens, and anyone within range 3 of Yoda can share those tokens. Doubling up with everything else that is sharing tokens within GAR, this is really just adding additional levels of that support to the character. So while Yoda is a bit expensive, and while he is a good attacking piece, he kind of falls into that mixed bag of support versus offensive commander.
I didn't realize he orders each eligible unit with that card too.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That seems very good.
There were only ever 2 cards that ordered each eligible unit. It was this and an entire Legion from Palpatine. So this is the only one that still exists in the game. It's just perfect. Order control is so strong.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about Yoda. Now let's talk about the other character that kind of breaks our rule here. Padme Amidala. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about Padme...
She's an operative.
She's an operative. Immediately breaks it. However, she kind of holds some of those same principles. She's got the bolster action, so we're handing out surge tokens. She has Inspire 2, which is taking off suppression. The great thing about some of the forum rulings we've had recently is if you put Inspiring Presence on Padme, her courage value can be used by anyone in the army. You suddenly have a courage 3 bubble where, your Rex, your Cody, your clone commander, those are all courage 2, which is the base courage value of a clone trooper infantry. Padme is the only non-force user way to get courage 3 within GAR. It gets a special shout out from that. Additionally, this new strike team leader upgrade that we got in the upgrade pack, I believe it was a week or 2 weeks ago at this point, you can choose a special forces unit and they basically get retinue. So you're giving additional free tokens in a faction where, as long as you have the clone trooper keyword, you are sharing those tokens. So Padme, while not a support commander, gets to be kind of slotted into this same role through upgrades in the game.
Yeah. And actually, that reminds me of another new card that we have not talked about somehow is Trusted Agent. So another card to put in that important command slot. It just gives out an order to an operative. So if you have an operative, free money and free order control. It is a one-time use, so it's similar to Seize the Initiative, but your operative doesn't have to take that upgrade to get a free order. Your commander
frees
can
up a training slot.
Yeah, frees up a training slot, exactly.
And training slots are great. Okay, that leaves us with 2 factions left. So where do you want to go from here? My bad. CIS it is. So we can kind of talk about Kalani and Kraken as 2 sides of the same coin. They're very similar. So they both have Strategize. Kraken has Strategize 1. Kalani has Strategize 2. They both have Exemplar. Kalani gets Direct AI Unit, which is extremely strong, while Kraken gets Override. Also strong, and you don't think about Override as much anymore because the rules for how AI have changed. But when it comes up, man, is it important. And you like having that Override. Reinforcements, also great, but we'll get to that in a second. So, both units are very focused on generating that aim and a dodge, or in Kalani's case, 2 aims and 2 dodges, taking tokens for themselves and sharing within that buff again. Very strong. Additionally, their command cards are very great for supporting the army. Let's talk about their 2-pip and their 3-pip real quick. So the 2-pip gives Disengage, Impervious, and a dodge to whoever you issue the orders to. So incredibly strong. imagine a B2 squad or a Magna Guard squad with disengage. Or your B2 squad that is bogged down with a force user now has impervious. You're rolling extra red saves. Really just great all around support command card, and really is kind of exemplifying what we're talking about giving those buffs and supporting the rest of the army while not being greedy themselves. The 3-pip is another excellent card example of supporting armies with kind of 2 different pathways. Pathway 1, they get a free recover action. Okay.
That seems good.
Not bad. Situationally useful with like a B2 with a Ha or something like that. But really that bottom part is what we're going to be focused on. So giving 3 allied units reinforcements is really good. If you're not aware, reinforcements says at the end of turn 1, a unit with reinforcements gets a free speed 1 move. And so you just creep closer to the opponent. You can do things like reinforce snail tanks, which obviously go much farther with a speed 1 move. You can reinforce an AAT or crab droids, droidica, B2s. The list goes on. We could sit here naming droid units all day. I almost did.
CIS would benefit from reinforcements.
Exactly. So great command card. Lots of options there. Kalani and Kraken are probably like one of the like staple examples of support commanders. And I'm just realizing I forgot one on this list. The generic T series. We'll touch on him quickly. He directs 2 core troopers. He has bolster for that 2 surge tokens, and he has exemplar as well. Absolutely wild that this unit picked up exemplar in the addition chain, but here we are.
And obviously, directing droid trooper units, very good in CIS. It can start your chain of orders, which they love so much. So
starts the B1 chain. And finally, Poggle. Poggle is the bottom end of our points cost for support commanders at 55, which is crazy. It's so good. He has Compel, which is really mostly going to be beneficial to the Geonosians. He has Entourage B2s for some additional order support, which is great. He has Override. We've talked about that bubble, which is wonderful. But most importantly is that Courage 3. Inspiring Presence should be just about stapled on to any Poggle the Lesser build that you have. Since droid troopers don't lose actions when they have suppression, any way to increase that point where they might not panic is absolutely wonderful. And so Poggle the Lesser, giving that Courage 3 bubble at range 4 is a nightmare for your opponent. Your droids are pretty much never going to panic unless something really wild happens. His command cards are okay. The only one that's really worth mentioning is going to be We Make Weapons. You are also only really going to be taking this command card if you have a swarm of B2s, because you just get to bring back a whole B2 model, which is 2 health. That's pretty strong. So that's CIS in a nutshell. Some good options.
Yeah, seems good.
Finally.
Last but not least, sort of, is Shadow Collective. I don't know if I've seen both of these options on the table very often. So we could start with the Pike Capo.
They used to be. Not so much anymore.
They used to be. Yes, the Pike Capo is great for supporting some Pike core units, obviously. He has aid to fellow Pike units. So with independent dodge, he can just pass that dodge to one of his core friends. And they have outmaneuver and danger sense. So the more dodges they have, the better off they are. And really the same thing for the Vigo. He can aid the Black Sun Corps, and he gets independent aim.
We are wrapping up. We have covered all of the support commanders that currently exist in the game. We do know there's some exciting things coming out this year and early next year, though. We have the generic commanders. We're while we don't know for sure, we are anticipating that there are going to be ways to build them that fit into that support role, so you can kind of custom build how you want them to support your army. So that's very exciting, even though we don't fully know what it is. And then we have Imperial High Command coming in, I believe, January, or it's at least Q1 of 2026 for Empire. That's, let's see, Grand Moff Tarkin, Grand Admiral Thrawn, and then General Tog, I believe. It's a lesser known character, but it's fine. We don't know what they do yet. I think the Wills in their various interviews have really indicated and hinted that Tarkin is going to have pull the strings. I think they've pretty much said that outright at this point. So that's going to be another fantastic support ability coming back to the overall game. So
yeah,
hopefully this episode has helped you understand what exactly people mean by support commanders. You might also hear it as like middle management is another term that I've heard in the game used for it.
I've never heard middle management.
How have you never heard that?
What? Who are you talking to about Legion?
Apparently not the same people you are.
No, not at all.
Well.
All right. So
but,
yes, I hope we were helpful to someone, some people, somewhere. But I forgot last episode. I would be kicking myself if I did not include the things we're into section to close us out. Just a quick segment to talk about non-Legion things. Richard, how about you tell us what things you've been up to outside of Legion in the past 2 weeks or so?
I mean, my entire life has been focused around studying for a professional certification exam. So I took part 1 of 3 this morning as of the date of filming and passed. So that's exciting. It's got like a 38% pass rate. So
amazing. Well, congratulations
pretty
on passing. I did know that was all you were into. And so I led with you. So we didn't end on a really boring note. I, on the other hand, have gotten a Kickstarter in. I've waited over a year or so. I don't remember when I ordered it, but one of my Kickstarters came in. And so the sequel to Earthborn Rangers, which Richard alluded to on the first episode, a game I'm very into. The sequel is in Legacy of the Ancestors. So it's a campaign that I'm playing through. I just started it. Originally, I was playing with Taylor, my wife. She is not as interested as I am. So I'm doing the sequel campaign by myself, but it's fine. I'm having a wonderful time. And more importantly, I got in a whole book about the lore of Earthborn Rangers.
Amazing.
I am fully invested in this game. I'm having a wonderful time. I'm replaying the original campaign with different characters. I'm starting the sequel campaign with my old characters. I'm just doing all the Earthborn things, and it's been wonderful. So if you don't know anything about that game, feel free to hit me up or ask me questions. I love talking about it. Everyone in our group is tired of me talking about it, especially Dan.
No, that part's true. But
yeah, that part's true.
I'll always support you talking about your hobbies.
Thank you. So with that, I think that's a wrap. And as always, don't forget to crypt to black.